Hey everybody, good to see you. I'm Vladimir Dutsier alongside Anne-Marie Green. Of course, we've been from the early morning reporting from our respective homes here on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, I should say. And Anne-Marie, you are in Philadelphia. And there's still a lot of news to get to as we've been listening to several press conferences, including New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. We heard earlier from the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. We're also scheduled, of course, to hear from New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. But let's dig into some politics, Anne-Marie. There's a new poll out that shows voters are divided on the sexual assault allegations against former Vice President Joe Biden. A Monmouth University poll released today shows nearly a third of Americans are unsure what to make of the allegations, while 32% say the allegations likely are not true. 37% of voters believe Tara Reade. Ryan Grimm is here to give us some insights into these claims. He is the Intercept's D.C. bureau chief and has been at the forefront of the reporting on Tara Reade. So thanks so much for joining us, Ryan. Let's start with your reporting. You published two pieces, one of which uncovered the Larry King clip featuring what is reportedly Tara Reade's mother. Let's take a listen to that.
I'm wondering what a staffer would do besides go to the press in Washington. My daughter has just left there after working for a prominent senator and could not get through with her problems at all. And the only thing she could have done was go to the press, and she chose not to do it out of respect for him.
Really fascinating stuff there. So just for our audience, give us a couple of insights into your reporting. How were you able to verify that this is Reade's mother? And what insight does this give us into what may have happened in 1993?
So we can pretty conclusively say that that was Reade's mother, particularly because she mentioned to me during the course of the reporting that her mother called into the Larry King show and kind of mortified her by mentioning her in a veiled way in her interaction with the Biden office. When we originally published the story, I hadn't been able to find the video yet, but she had kind of more or less accurately described the thrust of what the call was. Now, her memory was not perfect on it. The way that we can be pretty sure that that's her mother is that her mother was living in San Luis Obispo at the time. This is a caller from San Luis Obispo. The call is in August of 1993. She says her daughter just left a Senate office. Tara Reade left a Senate office in August of 1993. So the only way it could not be her is if there was some other mother living in San Luis Obispo whose daughter had also had problems in a Senate office and had also left in August of 1993. And the way that you can kind of dismiss that potential coincidence is that Tara mentioned the call to me before it was found. I mentioned the call on a podcast interview, and a listener to that podcast was actually able to find it using a transcription service that I hadn't thought of using, because I didn't realize that some of those services went back to the early 1990s. But to your other question, it's important to talk about what it confirms and what it doesn't confirm. So on the latter, it does not confirm anything about a sexual assault. What it does do is it buttresses her credibility, because there are a lot of questions around whether or not she actually filed a complaint, whether or not she complained at the time about anything going on with the Biden office. And this is evidence that she had talked to her mother about complaints with the Biden office that were significant enough that the press would care about them. So it puts away the possibility that she only in 2019 decided to start coming forward with utterly fabricated complaints. Like it demonstrates that this goes back to her time there. When her friend Linda Lacoste came out just recently saying that she told her about the assault in 1995 or 1996, sitting on the front steps in front of their apartment building, that also adds to the fact that she's been telling this story, consistently since the early 1990s. There's also a friend of hers who's anonymous at this point, doesn't want her name used, who she told about this at the time. She also said she told her mother. Her mother has passed away. but this call gives some credibility to the claim that she was talking to her mother about problems that she was having with the Biden office.
It's all really information, because this is something that, she's alleging happened decades ago. It's difficult to provide proof. Joe Biden says that none of this happened at all. Some of the people who are working in his office say they don't recall any issues with her. And so it is important that people know that there are others who say they do remember her talking about it at the time or shortly after it. You wrote another really interesting piece about the Time's Up movement and how Time's Up did not seem interested in Reade's story. Why do you think that is?
So they were, I would characterize it differently. They were interested in the story, and they interacted with Reade over the course of several weeks. And Reade, for a while, thought that Time's Up was going to take and fund her case. It turned out that didn't happen. The reason that they have said they decided not to was on legal advice. So Time's Up is a 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit, which is housed under the National Women's Law Center. And they said that, according to the legal advice that they were given, that because Joe Biden is running for federal office, that would implicate their tax-exempt status, and it would look like they were participating in electioneering. You could certainly, I think, find tax lawyers who would back up some element of a conservative interpretation like that. More commonly, you find tax lawyers who would say that, as long as your organization is following a strict set of criteria, in other words, as long as Time's Up is doing what it does, which is represent women who have allegations against men in male-dominated industries, then it doesn't matter if that man happens to be also running for federal office at the time.
Ryan, what did you make of former Vice President Biden's interview that he gave to MSNBC? And I understand, of course, that that's a friendly news network, but the interview did hit upon a lot of the questions that you raised in some of your reporting, specifically with regards to the complaints that Ms. Reade may have lodged with the Senate. And the vice president said that he was asking or directing or requesting that the Senate release any records or any information that Ms. Reade may have given to them back in 1993. There was some question over his files at the University of Delaware. There are some who are saying that Democrats are in danger of coming off as hypocrites because of the accusations that were lobbied against Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh and former Senator Al Franken. And there are others who are saying, well, at least he's addressing them, albeit in an interview that he gave on MSNBC. He hasn't done it often, unlike the President of the United States, who's had multiple instances of women who've come forward to allege sexual assault or misconduct, and he has not denied all of them. So I wonder how you read what the vice president is doing as far as answering these claims made by Ms. Reade. Is he being transparent enough for you?
Right. He had a fine line to walk, because politicians in general don't want to give extra oxygen to allegations until they absolutely have to. Democrats in particular don't want it to look like they are they're not believing women, or they're not listening to women, or they're not giving women a chance to be heard. So his line to walk is he was trying to deny this particular allegation without attacking kind of the Me Too movement more broadly, or women's right to be heard in this space. There have been so many advances made by the Me Too movement since 2017, which are under assault now, and he doesn't want to be blamed for helping to roll back the Me Too movement. When it came to his papers, I don't think he handled that part particularly well, because Republicans are extraordinarily anxious to get a storyline going that Joe Biden needs to open up his University of Delaware papers. And it's not simply to look for a piece of paper that might confirm that Tara Reade had filed a complaint around harassment at the time. It's really to do similarly to what they did to Hillary Clinton with John Podesta's emails, which is produce, in the final months of the campaign, a drip, drip, drip of negative stories, because reporters would love nothing more than to dig through 50 years of files and look for his letters to segregationists, looks for his interactions with foreign leaders, look for anything else, because most of what he did throughout his political career puts him on the opposite side of where the Democratic Party is today politically. So the Trump campaign would be able to use that to drive a wedge between Biden and his potential voters. So by kind of tamping down or trying to kind of shut down a search of those papers, he probably played into the GOP trap there, because journalists are going to side with transparency. I think a smarter move, and I think this is where he might ultimately end up, would be to say, okay, look, I don't think that any personnel records related to Tara Reade are in those files, but I will ask the University of Delaware to run a search strictly limited to papers for Tara Reade. And then once you have done that, then you've satisfied that particular demand, and then further demands for full transparency into the University of Delaware papers can fairly easily be waved away once you've done that.
Ryan, I want to ask you about your personal insights about Tara Reade. You know, from sort of our end of it, we've heard kind of stories that seem like they could be conflicting stories. That she lodged a complaint. There was something about sexual harassment. No, it wasn't sexual harassment. It was discomfort. She was going to do an interview with Fox News. Now she's not doing it anymore. But you've sat down with her. Does her story seem to you consistent? Does it make sense? And I just want to sort of get a sense of, how you felt about I guess the experience with her, the type of person that she is, which is probably asking you to sort of reach a little further than your journalistic boundaries would allow. But I'm curious about who she is.
So when she first reached out and said that she had come forward in April with a set of allegations around inappropriate touching that happened in the wake of the Lucy Flores, if you remember that spring 2019 situation where a lot of women were coming forward to say that that Biden had kind of touched them inappropriately, made them feel uncomfortable. She said, I came out then to support Lucy Flores. I have more of my story to tell. And I haven't been able to. I've been trying to tell it, and I haven't been able to tell it since. Certainly you wonder as a reporter. Well, that's odd. Why didn't you tell your entire story back in April of 2019? Two things persuaded me to go forward with the reporting. One is that if you know the literature or around victims and how they come forward, it actually is an extremely normal phenomenon to tiptoe your way into the public, because it's traumatic to retell your story, and it's much easier to tell certain parts of it to certain people. And so, she said that at the time she felt comfortable coming forward with that because she knew she'd be part of a group of people. She wanted to support Lucy Flores. There had been, what she was alleging happened in front of other people, and it was the kind of thing that Joe Biden had done throughout his career. So it wasn't the kind of charge that was going to instantly cause people to say, "Wait, that's impossible. I can't believe that." The situation with more of a he said, she said in the hallway that she came out with later. So she said she thought, that there was more, that she was able to come forward to kind of support Lucy Flores at that time, who herself was under attack for coming forward. She wanted to say, no, this part is true. And she knew that she wouldn't become kind of a national figure of attention at that point. And so that made it easier to tell that part of the story. At the same time, the fact that, and the second thing is that she had told people at the time, and that's a bar that we have sort of set for credibility for Me Too allegations. Did you tell people at the time who are willing to talk to reporters about that? And And did you and can they talk to you, in a detailed and persuasive way? She had a good friend who was an intern for Senator Kennedy, who she lived in the same kind of boarding house with at the time, who she had told and who remembered, in detail about hearing from her. She had told a less detailed, less graphic version of it to her brother, and she had also said that she told her mother. And the fact that her friend and her brother remembered her telling her mother, to me, that helped establish sort of a third person, even though her mother is no longer with us. Since then, her friend Linda has come forward to say that she also told me in the mid '90s. So, certainly, people can view her story skeptically, but you always have to keep coming back to the fact that she's been telling this story, for 27 years, and so if she's fabricating it, and she's been fabricating it for 27 years, and we know in the literature that is an extraordinarily rare phenomenon.
All right, Ryan Grimm, really appreciate your reporting and appreciate you talking to us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.